you noticed how everybody's talking about Spanish food these days? Tapas bars, serrano ham, Marcona almonds, smoked paprika. I mean, the stuff is just everywhere. Spanish seems to be the hot new cuisine. Well, it's not exactly new, but to a lot of Americans it is. Now, did you notice how I said Spanish cuisine and not Mexican? I mean, they're completely different. I mean, one's old world European, the other one is new world. But a lot of people get them confused, I think, because, well, they're both Spanish-speaking countries, and there's a lot of evidence of Spanish colonial cuisine in the cuisine of Mexico. I mean, the Spanish conquistadores brought ingredients like pork and cheese and eggs to the New World. Things that we now think of as the heart of Mexican cooking. And on the way back, they took tomatoes, beans, corns, and pepper, things that we identify completely with Spanish cooking. Now, that exchange started 5 centuries ago, and it's still going on. You see it everywhere in Mexico, from colonial architecture to the Catholic culture, language, art, faces of the people, music, and of course, in the food. In fact, when I lived in Mexico City, Sunday was Paella Day, and restaurants would make gigantic pans of the stuff. When I say gigantic, I mean gigantic. Look at this. So if you're planning a fiesta at your place and you've got a great big crowd to feed, well, a 3-foot paella pan may be just the ticket. The cool thing is, these are becoming much more readily available these days in the United States, especially from the Spanish cooking equipment internet sites. So whether you're planning to make your paella in a very traditional Spanish flavor, or you want to weave those Mexican flavors into it, paella is always a big crowd pleaser. Oh, wonderful. Your photo album from your quinceañera. You know, a year ago when we celebrated Lainey's quinceañera, you know, that fabulous Latin American tradition of celebrating a girl's 15th birthday party?
It's almost like a sweet 15.
Yeah, well, you know, we made paella the main attraction of the celebration.
Well, except for me, of course.
Of course. We did it the traditional Mexican way, on a wood fire in a homemade hornillo.
It was awesome.
I think I agree. And tonight we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have a party for 25 with Mexican takes on all of those Spanish classics. We're going to have gazpacho, flan, sangria, and of course, paella. You know, it's going to be unforgettable food with a lot of dramatic appeal.
We could call it a 16añera.
Let's just call it a great paella party. Let's start with dessert.
Ooh, life is short. Dessert first.
Well, I was sort of thinking about coffee and dessert all in one. Flan de café.
Ooh, Spanish. And very Mexican.
Well, yes, of course, because flan came to Mexico through Spain, and today it's every bit as Mexican as it is Spanish. But today I thought we'd tip more toward the Mexican side of things and start with cajeta.
Ooh, goat's milk caramel.
Yes, instead of caramelized sugar. You want to grab the cajeta out of the cabinet there? Now, we're going to use for molds for individual flans these flexible silicone muffin tins. It really works great when you've got a big crowd to feed. And we're going to pour about a tablespoon of cajeta in the bottom of each one of these molds. Way easier than working with all that hot caramelized sugar. Okay, Lainey, we're going to mix together all of the ingredients for the custard. Now, if you could grab the milk, I'm going to put a measuring cup here for you to measure in 3 cups of that.
Okay.
And I'm going to add the traditional flavorings for a Mexican café de olla. Now, café de olla in Mexico is a spiced sweet coffee that's served at the end of the meal, and it always has cloves and cinnamon and, well, in my version of it, always a little bit of orange peel to give it a very lovely aromatic quality. So we're going to combine all of that together. And Lainey, if you could measure in 1/3 cup of that coarse ground dark roast coffee. That's gonna be super delicious in that. I'm gonna move these guys right over here while I open 2 cans of sweetened condensed milk. Okay, these guys are gonna go in with our spiced coffee mix. I'm gonna ask you to just put that to the side if you would, Lane. And we're gonna turn on the fire to about a medium heat. When the mixture comes to a boil, we'll let it steep for about 10 minutes. Okay, so the milk mixture is ready. Lane, you wanna grab the eggs out of the refrigerator there, and we're going to beat together 6 eggs and 8 egg yolks. So if you want to put the 6 eggs in here, let me get this out of the way over here so that we have a little bit more space. And I'll separate the 8 eggs. And then strain in the steeped milk mixture and whisk everything together. Okay, it's time now to fill our cajeta lined molds there. Let's each grab a ladle here, and we'll fill them to about 3/4 full. Go ahead. This is cooked in a hot water bath. That's the reason that I have these broiler pans underneath them. Plus the fact that those flexible silicone molds are quite flexible. You want to pour about 1 inch of water into each one of them. This will help to cook that flan evenly and very gently. Now you can open the oven door. And I'm gonna slide these in. I've got the oven set at 325 degrees. And these will take about 50 to 60 minutes to cook. Once they're set, you can touch them and they'll be just about set right in the middle. Bring them out and let them cool in the water bath, and then refrigerate them outside the water bath until you're ready to serve. Well, I thought we'd make the gazpacho.
Spanish? Mexican? What?
The way we're gonna do it, it's gonna be a little bit of both. Now, what's gonna make it Mexican is roasted tomatoes and roasted poblanos. What's gonna make it Spanish is cucumber and onion. And I'm gonna ask you to chop those all up so that we can add them fresh as a garnish to our finished gazpacho. And while you're doing that, if you would chop those 3 tomatoes and a little bit of cilantro to go in there as well. Cool. Now I'm gonna spread these poblanos out here on a baking sheet with a little over half of our tomatoes, and we're gonna roast these under a broiler. I've already got that hot here. After about 5 or 6 minutes, those should be beautifully darkly roasted on one side. And while they're roasting, I'm gonna also roast some garlic over about a medium heat. I'm gonna do this roasting in the Mexican way, taking the cloves of garlic, unpeeled cloves of garlic, and laying them right in the dry skillet. How many we've got there? 6. I could use a couple more, I think. Now, after about 15 minutes, I'll turn them every once in a while. They'll be completely soft on the inside, blotchy black in places, and then I'll be able to cool them off and just slip those papery skins right off. After that first 5 or 6 minutes in the oven, the tomatoes and chilies should be blackened beautifully. I'll flip them over, roast the other side, bring them out, and then let them completely cool down. Those poblanos, I'm gonna wipe off that blackened skin once they get cool enough to handle. Tear out the seed pod, rinse them very briefly to get any stray seeds or skin off of them, and then roughly chop that. Now the tomatoes, when they're completely cooled down, I'm gonna pull off that blackened skin, roughly chop those up, and then combine all of it into a blender jar. Okay, the Roasted garlic is going to go in with the roasted poblanos and roasted tomatoes, and we'll blend it to a smooth puree. I'm going to put that into a large bowl while we make the second half of the base. I can already smell all those beautiful roasted flavors. And then our fresh tomatoes, as goes into a classic gazpacho, get blended after we roughly chop them here. Now we'll put all of those into the blender jar here. Now I'm going to cut off the skin of this cucumber because I don't want to darken our base anymore. And then we'll roughly chop that to add to the raw tomato. Now here go all of the classic flavorings for gazpacho. Olive oil, vinegar, and I'm using a sherry vinegar, and some red wine. And we're going to thicken this also in a very traditional Spanish way with a couple of slices of white bread. Just tear those up, combine everything in the blender jar, and again make a smooth puree. So two bases go together here. One very classic Mexican in flavor with roasted ingredients. One with fresh raw ingredients, all flavored in quite a Spanish tradition. I'm going to mix all of those together. I'm going to season that with salt. It'll take a fair amount because I'm making enough for a large group here. About a little over a tablespoon of salt is the right amount for that. Stir that up, and then check the consistency. If it's thicker than, say, a light cream soup, you're going to want to add a little bit of water to it. I think it'll take just a little bit here. Ah, lovely. I think people are going to love this. Give it a little taste. Pretty delicious stuff. I like it to be really chilled. That's when the flavors come out the best, I think. So I'm going to put it here in the refrigerator until we're ready to serve. Okay, so how are you coming on the garnishes? I see
Almost
you've
done.
finished the onion, the tomato, the cucumber. You're working on the cilantro there. I brought some hard-boiled eggs that we're going to chop up and some croutons. I thought the easiest way to go through this task would be to use the old-fashioned egg slicer there for doing the first part of the slicing of the eggs, and then we'll chop from there. Are you finished with the cilantro?
Yeah.
Scoop it over there into a bowl.
So how exactly are we gonna serve all of this?
Well, I was thinking that we would get some glasses and then put a little bit of each one of these fresh garnishes in that, and then we could just pour that cold soup on it right when the guests arrive.
What are we gonna pour from?
Well, I was thinking that we'd just put it in a big pitcher.
Pitcher. Speaking of pitcher, what are we gonna do for drinks?
Ah, back to that old Mexican and Spanish theme. I was thinking about limonada.
You mean sparkling Mexican limeade?
Yeah, and then I thought we would turn that limeade into sangria. Well, a sort of Mexican-style sangria. So if you don't mind, start juicing the limes while I gather the rest of the ingredients.
Sure.
a great job on that lime juice. Now,
Thanks.
put it all in the pitcher. And then if you don't mind putting in 3 cups of sugar to 4 cups of the fresh squeezed lime juice. And I'm gonna add about a cupful of corn syrup. That's gonna give a really nice texture to this base. Looking pretty lovely, isn't it?
Yes.
Stir that up until the sugar dissolves. I wanna see if it, oh, thank you, one for me too. There, let's see what it looks like.
Good, but strong.
It should be, because we're gonna finish these with sparkling water and with red wine. So let's try a sample here. Now for yours, I'm gonna put that much of the base in there and top that off with a little club soda for the sangria. And this is what makes this sangria so different than Spanish sangria. It starts with that fresh squeezed limeade. And I'm going to put the red wine on top of it. It should float on top of the thicker consistency. And if you don't mind, Lane, just give me a splash of club soda on the top of that as well. Ah, very nice. Cheers.
Cheers.
Good job. Okay. Now the thing is that when you're gonna cook a paella in a pan that big, well, you gotta have a fire that's big enough to cook it on. I suppose depending on what kind of stove you have, you could put the big pan over several burners, let it straddle that, or you could go out and you could buy a butane paella burner. But for a lot of reasons, I prefer to cook the paella over a wood fire. I mean, number one, it's a very even heating cooking source, but it's also one that gives a beautiful smoky flavor. It's traditional. And to tell you the truth, well, it turns the main dish into a main event. I mean, when you've got that great big pan of simmering paella right in front of your guests, well, that's about all the party entertainment that you're gonna need. So I'm gonna build a little brick hornillo here. It's actually a semicircular support for the paella pan. And the first thing that I have to do is to get the bricks right in line here so that I can make sure that the pan will fit exactly over the top of it. Let me just take a look at it because I want to make sure that the bricks support the, put that one in a little bit more there, support the pan, but don't come too far up underneath so the edges will cook evenly. There, that looks good. Now I'm gonna build this semicircular hornillo 6 courses of bricks high.
Wow, this is a lot of groceries.
We're making a huge paella. Well, let's double check to make sure that we got everything here. Okay. Now for the broth, we're gonna need a gallon and of course salt to go in with that. And then for the flavorings, we got 3 pounds of chorizo, 10 poblano chilies, 4 big white onions, a couple heads of garlic, and a couple big cans of fire roasted tomatoes. Okay, for the rice, 8 pounds, medium grain rice. Now for the meat, 30 chicken thighs, a bottle of olive oil to cook them in there. And then we've got 4 pounds of shrimp,
I'm running out of room.
7 pounds of mussels. And then for the green stuff, a couple of bags of peas and some flat leaf parsley. I think we filled up the countertop. Okay, now all we have to do to get ready for this thing is chop onions and chop garlic. I'm gonna roast, peel, and chop up these poblanos, and then we gotta heat up the broth. Then it's all gonna be ready for us when we're ready for it.
Okay.
So the first thing I'm going to do is to put some olive oil in here. And then this is a lot of chicken that's going to go in there. And we just want to sear it, brown it nicely. Okay, next we're going to put in this Mexican chorizo sausage. That'll take about 10 minutes or so to cook. The chopped onion. I wanted to do this one with sort of really super classic Mexican flavors. You know, the roasted peppers and tomatoes and all that sort of stuff with the chorizo sausage. Those roasted poblanos that we had talked about. And then a bunch of roasted tomatoes. It's a lot of rice, as you can see. 8 pounds of rice is gonna go in. This is my favorite moment. This is when it all of a sudden starts coming together and it looks like it's gonna be a really great dish. Take the shrimp now. I was a little worried.
Yeah.
I was a worried. Beautiful. This looks really good.
Hey, some coffee flan con cajeta.
Oh, it's coffee flavor.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, what's cajeta?
Cajeta is like a caramel. It's made from goat's milk. Really delicious stuff.
Coffee flavor.
Yeah. Enjoy, guys.
Thank you.
So what's the verdict?
It's fantastic. So can we make this party an annual tradition?
Wait a second. That's what you said last year.
Well, now that'll be part of the tradition.
Well, I could go with that.